Welcome to Real Estate Real World, where we talk to the movers, shakers, and leaders that are getting it done right now in the real estate industry and beyond. I'm your host, Marguerite Crespillo, and I started this podcast simply dedicated to calling people about what's really happening in this crazy roller coaster ride of real estate. Be sure to subscribe on iTunes and stay up to date on the newest stuff by adding yourself to the list at www.realestaterealworld.com. Now, let's dive into the world of real estate. Hello, it's Marguerite Crespillo, and it is time for Real Estate Real World. Thank you so much for joining us today. Today, we have an extremely special guest. I've known this, I like to say young man, because I know he's younger than me. For many years, I met him back in the REO days, and he was really kicking things into high gear. So let me read his bio real quick. Leo Pareja started his real estate career at 19 and became the #1 Keller Williams agent globally by 28 years old. He co-founded Washington Capital Partners, growing it into a major private lending company, and Remind, the fastest growing MLS platform. After exiting both ventures, Leo joined eXp Realty's executive leadership. Recognized multiple times in the Swanpool Power 200, he also co-founded the Pareja Family Foundation in 2020, which offers scholarships to disadvantaged women and minorities for tech boot camps, helping them break into the industry debt-free. So welcome, Leo.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate you.
Yeah, I'm so excited to have you here. And I'm cracking up because I live out in the country and we have dogs and life. And 10 minutes ago, all my dogs were barking, freaking out. And I'm like, you guys, I have a big pod. That's how life works, right? You're a family man. You understand it.
Absolutely.
The crazy part too is that I've been here now at eXp 8.5 years. It
Wow.
was wild when
you were a pioneer.
I joined right after Brent did. And I think his number 2 or 3 people that he signed up. And I was so excited when I heard you were joining. And at the time you joined in a different position. Now you're the CEO, you're the big dog. But what were you originally?
How did you originally as our president of our affiliate companies?
Yeah. And what's funny is I connected you, but I don't think he ever messaged you. My best friend, Brian, of 40 years, has been in the insurance industry. I'm like, you got to talk to Leo. So one of these days I'll connect you guys, but I'm excited that you're here. And I'm even more excited that you're the CEO. How has all of this transitioned for you from going in all the other stuff you were doing? How does it feel now to be the CEO?
So I've been the founder and CEO most of my life. And so I can tell the story how Glenn convinced me to come over here. When we were introduced by a mutual friend, and he actually called me and asked me to be the chief technology officer, which I very politely declined very quickly. I said I can play one on TV, but it's not, I don't get excited about that. And then he actually called me back. He said, I wasn't expecting you to say no. You want to come hang out and just get to know each other a little bit? Because surprisingly, I did not know him and he didn't know me, even though we were in the same kind of circles for many decades. And so he asked me what I was going to do next. I had just exited our last business. And I said, I'll probably start another one. It was the third one I've done. And he said, well, until you figure out what you want to do next, why don't you come hang out here? And I have a big company with big company problems. And I've been told you're smart and you can help me fix stuff. And when you're ready to go, we could either buy it, or when you have your next idea, we can either buy it and you can run it, or you can go off and raise a fund and do what you did last couple times. And I'd like to participate in your capital raise. And I joined as the president of affiliate companies to help optimize some of the opportunities in companies we own. And 6 months into the journey, he said, I heard you're touching this and you're touching that and you're doing this. And I actually gave him all my objections of why I didn't think I would do well in a big company, because I've never had a job. This is actually my first job I've ever had. And I told him I don't know how to behave in a corporate environment. I don't know that I want to learn either. I am who I am. And he said, that's actually why I want you here. 6 months in, he made me the chief strategy officer, which he described as a shadow CEO that could still be very operational, but didn't have to be the face of the business. And it's a big difference at this company. And the CEO conversation came up a couple times, and I kept telling him, like, this works great. everyone loves you. You're very ingrained in the culture. And I like being the operator. And for the first time in my life, I called it the fun uncle versus the dad, and I was cool with that. Like the ones that knew what I was capable of, like you, behind the scenes, and I was perfectly okay with that. But there's some moments in time where it's not a choice, and NAR happened. And one way or the other, I not only became the face of our company, but also the industry in lots of ways, because I was one of the only executives willing to be as loud as I am. And then within a couple of weeks of NAR happening, he called me. He said, "You are the CEO. This is no longer us." So that was the journey to the seat, and that's how I got
You
here.
know, it's been so fascinating to watch because I've been in real estate for 30 years, and like I said, I remember hearing your name so much in the REO days. You were doing there was a lot going on, obviously, and you were doing a lot, and everyone, who is this young kid who's like, And so I remember when I ran into you at I think it was at EXPCon, and I was like, I introduced myself. You're like, I know who you are. I'm like, really? Like I was so surprised because it'd been so long since I seen you, so it was exciting. But I'll tell you that when all this NAR stuff started happening and I started seeing you speaking out, I was so proud. I was like a proud mama, even though I'm not your mom, but I was so proud because what I knew we needed more than anything was a get shit done kind of guy or person, right? We needed somebody who was going to just not sit back and wait for things to happen, but to get stuff done. And so I've been so inspired by what you have done to lead the industry. And what's funny is you're doing a lot with, I know you've done a lot of conversations with Anthony Lamacchia. And here's a crazy story. He has a gal who works for him, who's worked for him for many years. Mel, I call her. And she was, when she was like 19 years old, she was my secretary. And then
Oh,
she moved to Boston. And so I got to go out there and see her. And I'm so, thrilled that she works for him. But I guess my big question is when all this happened, there's been such a divide, it seems. There's been such a divide between what the Department of Justice is really saying versus what NAR is saying, because you kept coming out saying that's not exactly what's going on. You guys need to pay a little more attention to what's really going on. Did you sit down and spend a weekend reading through all of that? Like
yes.
literally what I'm
So,
sure you
so I,
did.
yes, I actually read everything, which I think I can't say for a lot of our counterparts in the industry.
It feels like it,
Um,
right?
and the hard part is we had to make a decision with imperfect information, right? And I think that's actually most leadership moments in life feel that way, right?
100%.
And you just have to make do with what you have. And we have what I would describe as contradictory information. We have what the settlement says. We have what the DOJ demonstrated through a cease and desist to the California Association of Realtors. And then we also have what the MLSs will enforce and implement. And it was very much Holly and I sitting down and saying, okay, how do we create a path forward with imperfect information? And I think it's also super important to point out, like, by the way, I think the settlement sucks. And I think the plaintiffs' attorneys are a bunch of ambulance chasers and don't give a damn about our industry and or the
Exactly.
consumer for that matter.
Yeah.
And the reason I say that is because it was a money grab. And to me, the settlement is a pretty good reflection of it because it doesn't make a lot of sense for the consumer.
Yeah.
But here we are, and life is 10% what happens and 90% how you react to it. And so we created a path forward that, yes, went a step further than the settlement, but we felt it was the best way to protect us from future liability, and us meaning you as an agent out in the field and what you say and how you do it. And then more importantly, it was a less friction-full experience for the consumer, right? We're substantially moving the cheese. There's lots of headlines. I'm lucky and grateful enough that I'm actually commenting on almost every public CNN, CNBC, Market Watch, all of them, so I can at least give our vantage point.
Yeah.
And it's not just purely biased headlines. It's so I've it's become a lot of what I do, and I feel that even if I can just articulate the process and the value proposition, it's helpful so the consumers can get the agent perspective. The thing I say is, hey, we're making this up based on the information we have, and I reserve the full right to change my mind and fix it
Yeah.
and improve it and iterate it. But what I was not going to do was sit and wait for a committee of strangers to dictate our future.
And that is honestly what I love the most because I was laughing when you said you never really worked for anybody because I joke with my kids all the time. I was fired from more jobs than I was hired from, right? Like I didn't do
Well, I,
well in a work environment. So
especially with our backgrounds, you and I did work for Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. Like that was the closest I ever had to having a job, was fulfilling all those REO responsibilities.
exactly. But what's interesting to me too with this whole thing is obviously you have been the loudest and the most vocal, which was needed in this crazy industry. But I was trying to look one day, I was like, is it just my algorithm or is nobody else saying anything? Because I started going and looking at the other leaders of the other big companies, and I couldn't really find much of anyone else standing up and saying, no, this is not okay. This is what we need to do, and this is how it's going to be. And stepping into that role, you've obviously became an instant celebrity, so to speak, right? With all of the stuff that's going on. What kind of feedback have you gotten from other leaders? Like,
So two things. First, I want to shout out and recognize even the competitors we deal with, because James Dwiggins, Anthony Lamacchia. Sure, there are some folks who have decided to take up the same talking points, whether they're exact or different or varying, but there are definitely folks who have been outspoken.
yeah,
Um, I think we have the loudest microphone because we're an order of magnitude bigger than everybody else. And not to call people out in even a good way, there's a whole bunch who actually did exactly what we did, but they confidentially told me, they're like, "Look, I can't say it on social. I'm teaching it. We're literally following you,
yeah,
but I'm not gonna take to social media. I'm too small. I don't want the backlash."
right.
So I do want to shout them out. And then there's been a whole bunch of others who, even when I get off the stage at Inman or Riz Media, give me a hug and say, thank you. Thank you. We're a small indie and we're actually using your paperwork.
Yeah.
We didn't have the resources or the capability to do what you did, but we're on your YouTubes learning and following what you guys are doing. But then there's another group, and it tended to be the larger ones, who just chose to do nothing out of fear. And look, this is not a moment to pound our chests and be holier than thou on any side of this, because look, a lot of people are dealing with the litigation. There's a lot of fear and uncertainty. And look, I'm grateful that we are an enterprise that is sustainable and creates enough cash flow for us to afford great lawyers and good resources, and has the ability to employ the level of talent outside of myself. We have an incredibly deep bench in
Yeah, we
Holly
do.
and Jim Bramble and Kendall and Lauren, and we have really strong thought leadership around rules and how to do it. Um, because this is new to everybody. Like, and I'm so grateful that I'm surrounded by so many smart people, and other smaller companies have just told me, I don't know what to do. And I'm like, here's everything. It's free. Just take it. And here's the links to all of us teaching it so you can implement it yourself.
So we're almost a month in now. So since August 17th was the drop dead date when everything changed. And what are you seeing? Some of the stuff I'm seeing, just to give you my side of the insight, is I'm seeing kind of two paths. You're seeing people who've got it figured out and not even worried. Like I'm not worried. I've been doing buyer presentations for 30 years. So it didn't rattle me a whole lot at all, other than figuring out open houses and how to show property. That part's gotten a little bit wonky, a little confusing. But then there's this whole other track of people who have literally not looked at one thing, not done one thing. And I'm getting a call. They're like, I have an appointment in an hour and I haven't even looked at the forms. What do I do? And I'm like, yeah, yeah, yeah. So I guess what are you seeing from your side now that we're a few
Yeah.
weeks in?
So for good or bad, everything I say is recorded and has been for a
Of
very long
course.
time. So I predicted a messy middle. And what I couldn't predict is a length, where 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, 18 months. And what I said is, I think it's going to be almost tied to frequency of transactions. Like the producers will figure it out in 30 days, 60 days, 90 days.
Right.
But the folks who sell 4 houses a year might not get to that next transaction till
Yeah.
October, November, December, even January, February. So I am telling you, you're going to receive that call 6 months from now, and you're going to be like, what is going on? How is that possible? It's possible.
Yeah.
And that's where I'll tell you, I've seen a tale of two cities, is the folks who got it, internalized it. It was a nothing burger in their world. And then there's other ones who probably haven't done a transaction, who just, I don't get it. Woe is me. This isn't fair. I describe him as the blue character in Inside Out. And I truly believe that we will lose people at a non seasonal disproportional rate, right? If we lose X percent in any given month or year, we will lose a higher percentage just because a portion of the human population just won't adapt. And that's
Right.
just with any big change. Long term, it's somewhat irrelevant because real estate is super aspirational. And thanks to my buddy Ryan Serhant, continues to make it look really cool. And so a next group of folks that is ambitious and aspirational will still go get their real estate license and join us. And this is the part that I'm going to remind you guys of next summer, because I've been saying it, it's recorded, is we're all going to think of this transition as ridiculous as when we were wiping down groceries in COVID,
Yeah.
where it's like, there's no big deal. Like, it was obvious in retrospect. And what we'll have is a new normal, and this too shall pass. And
Yeah.
buyers and sellers need expert representation to hold their hand and get them through what's highly emotional, very infrequent, and super expensive and super important to where they're going to raise their family.
I love that you say that the messy middle part because you're right. Like I survived the whole COVID stuff. And when you had said that, you said it, I don't know where you were when you said it, but I remember you saying that. And I was talking to somebody about this buyer agreements and how we're going to do things. And they're like, we're not going to do that. And I said, there was a time when all of a sudden they said you had to have a PED, right? And the COVID document. And all of a sudden we all figured out how to make it work. And I guess it's just challenging to see the people who are in that second track, the blue from Inside Out. It, because I just want, sometimes you just want to like shake them and say, this is what we do for a living. Like it's really important that you sit down and read this and understand it. But I also know there's a lot of us type D who are like, we figure it out. We're like reading it as we're walking into the appointment too. We're like, oh, wait, I need to mark a box. And so I guess there's those tracks that do with that. Here's an interesting thing because I saw you posted something in our leadership chat this morning about the clear cooperation. And before I comment on that, I would like you to explain that a little bit and what that's all about and where that
Yeah,
came from.
no, that's the headline I created this week. So
Yeah.
I was at an event and a different leader said, we need to get rid of it and it's liability and this and that. And I strongly believe in the North American way of doing real estate. And I can say that as not only the CEO of a company that operates in 22 countries outside of North America, I also say it as someone who grew up in Latin America and like experienced not organized real estate. As Americans and Canadians, I think we take for granted the beauty that is our market.
Yeah.
It is a complete, liquid, and accurate database of information. Just like the concept of saying, hey, I want to see everything available in Bogota or Milan. I'm talking about world cities, G7 countries. It doesn't exist. It doesn't exist. And so the debate right now is, do we get rid of clear cooperation policy? And my answer, which by the way is the statement I shared in there, and this when I made sure NAR heard, and it's like, I am for a national framework with guardrails, because what most people again don't appreciate is we have a complete data set. If we get rid of everything the way it stands, we then create the opportunity for brokerages to hoard inventory and create silos of inventory, which is exactly how commercial real estate works in this country.
Right.
Right. And so we then stop competing on service and value to the consumer and start competing on inventory. And I think that creates a whole bunch of problems because by definition, some groups of people will have access to properties that other groups of people don't have access
Right.
to. And for example, and I say this often, I think we take for granted that there is a price in every market in this country that if I discounted by X percent, and that has to do with supply and demand and volume and all that in your said zip code, that tomorrow being Friday, I could price a home at X and receive 20, 30 multiple offers. One of them would be cash, and we could close in 10 days and we can turn that property into liquidity.
Right.
That doesn't exist outside of this country, right?
Yeah.
If you wanted to sell a home in 10 days in Colombia, in Panama, in Belize, in Southeast Asia, in Europe, it's just not going to happen. Like the UK is a super sophisticated market, and on average, it takes 6 months to close. Like we take for granted the liquidity and the accuracy. Like when you see a property listed and it's defined as active, the definition of the word,
Right.
willing and able to show. When it says 3 bedrooms, 2 bath, you appreciate that it's a bedroom with a closet and a window. That window sill is 44 inches from the floor. And that window has a 60-foot egress capable of letting any adult go through it, right?
Yeah.
So there's these definitions and these rules of engagement that come from a complete marketplace that has rules of engagement. Hey, if you are a market participant and you choose to belong, any and all listings you take go into the marketplace. And that's why we share information. It actually becomes substantially more expensive to market real estate if we go to this kind of fragmented silo, because then you're having to buy Google clicks and eyeballs, which by being a market participant in these marketplaces that are complete, it makes it so much more affordable to market a home.
I'm so glad you said that because I don't know that I really thought of it that way, even though, like I said, I've been around for a long time. I think there's a lot of things, especially something like the MLS, that you just take for granted. You just take that for granted that information is there and that everybody conforms to the consistency and the information that's there, because you get caught up sometimes in, why don't we just go make our own, or why don't we just go do this, or why don't. And I remember when Joe and I went to Spain a few years ago, and we, of course, we walked into a little real estate office. They don't have any licensing, number one. They didn't at the time in Spain. And they didn't have any kind of, I was like, how do you find properties? I go, well, we have flyers. Like, oh, well, what if I want to look for a property over there? They're like, oh, well, then you have to go over there and you have to talk to them. I was like, okay. So I think that some of these things as an industry, we take for granted, especially for those of us who've been around for a long time. It's very a simple system and a simple process. But with that also comes all of the issues that are now coming up with regards to how people are compensated and the information that's in there and a number of other things. Like, this came up, and I know you've already addressed this in other conversations, but we had a big meeting in our office in Roseville where Ryan Rosas, our state broker, came, and we had a bunch of people prior to the 17th to prepare for this. And we probably went over 10 times that how we will cooperate, right? And the bottom line is that we are happy to address anything that's in a contract, but we're not paying broker to broker, which is what the whole lawsuit was about. I am not kidding you. Somebody from that, and it was all industries, all companies, it was brand neutral. So somebody left that meeting, went back to their office and said, EXP is not going to cooperate with brokers.
No, and again, it happened, and it's the messy middle, right? So one, it was super regional, meaning, by the way, the state of California put out, in my opinion, really good forms, mostly because they got yelled at by the DOJ, and so they listened. And so California is actually the least problematic of our states, right? Other states have broker to broker forms. And so in California, you don't have the option. Like, it's not even a form. So
Right.
you guys, it's funny because I'll be in a mastermind group, and the California just, what are you guys talking about? This is no big deal. It's super simple.
Yeah,
And then other
exactly.
states are like, what are you talking about? Our state put out a broker to broker form. And that's the first choice. The second choice is what EXP is doing, and it confuses everybody. Part of this leadership moment for me is I've gotten on the phone with the CEOs of other companies, be like, hey, this is what your people are saying in the field. And they're like, dear God, that's not what they're supposed to be saying. And let's set the record straight. And that's also part of the messy middle. I think, again, there will be a moment in time where we're at the new normal. And there's probably a couple of ways of doing it. And people respect it. Is it vanilla, chocolate, strawberry? Pick your flavor, and we just move forward.
I guess the last couple questions I have, one of them has to do with, you mentioned California. This lawsuit originally originated in Missouri, if I'm not mistaken, right? The
You're
class
correct.
action lawsuit. And what's interesting is I'm in California. I live in California and have all my whole life. Is that we've always really, for the most part, had great contracts. So when this whole thing came up, I was also so confused. I was like, what are they talking about? Do they do things different in Missouri? And one of my business partners moved to Tennessee. And she's, you would not believe how antiquated in a lot of ways some of these other states and the way that they do things are compared to how we do it in California. So, as a CEO of running a company with the entire country, how do you manage every single state? I know you have Holly, who's amazing, also as well, but and not only is it different by state, but it can be different by county and even by city. Am I not mistaken?
Yeah. So I think it applies to how I describe the company, which is a platform that allows real estate entrepreneurs to build whatever size dream they want. The nuances between states and counties are actually not that different compared to when we leave the country. So I think the concept that Glenn nailed was localizing the business to the customs of that area. And so that could be a city, a state, or a country. And so a lot of things are in custom, like in Southern California, one party picks escrow. In Northern California, it's the opposite party. And Florida's the same way. South Florida is different than North Florida. Like the DMV where I grew up, it's all the same. But then I learned in Utah, both parties pick escrow. I'm like, well, what? So, so it's actually not that hard because everyone in that region does business that way. So and then you hire local and they teach you the customs. And again, this applies to going into a new country.
Yeah.
And I think that's the beauty of entrepreneurship because you're just aligning with the local people you serve.
Right. So I don't want to end this without talking a little bit about your nonprofit you created because I was just reading a little bit about it and I'm really inspired by it. So tell me, how did that come about? And tell us a little bit about it.
So I feel like you've probably met my wife at some event over the
I
years,
have.
but we've been together
You.
since we're super young, and we built everything together. We worked together in real estate and lending and tech. And one of the things that we solidified, like on our first date, was that we both wanted to be mentors with big brothers, and that's when we were like, okay, this is going to be my
Oh,
human.
yeah.
But what that taught us is the impact you can have by spending time with people and in a concentrated way. I feel, again, this could sound judgmental, but this is just like my experience. I feel like some people will do a check of the box kind of giving or charity, whether it's time or money. And to me, it's almost like a pacifier to feel good that you did something, or you do it once a year and around Christmas. And what I found is instead of just giving some money or donating your time at a fill in the blank event, just pick one person and pour into them. And so to me, giving could be in the form of mentorship or charity of time. And the first real impactful way we saw it was spending time with an 11-year-old who didn't have a role model. And I know the massive impact it made in the longer term. And so when we had more time and resources, we actually decided to start a foundation. And it was also from the lesson learned when we were both in the tech business that we operated, was that there's these great opportunities that you don't actually need a college degree for, right? Because they're merging tech that's not too complicated. So you don't need to be a computer engineer. And we just wanted to create access for folks that just didn't know it existed. And so we have some really cool success stories where people started at $35,000, $40,000, and we were able, after a 6-month boot camp, get them to $80,000, $90,000, $120,000 a year. And just like anything else, it's just making a decision. Tell people about giving is you don't actually need money. You just need the intent and the time. And you'd be surprised how many different organizations have money to give, and they just don't have somebody to be the operator. But we found good partners and a way to create impact.
I love that because I don't think that people always realize you mentioned time. And as a young girl, when I was a young girl, I got involved in Big Brothers Big Sisters, and I ended up having a big sister because I grew up with a single mom, and so it was tough like that. But it's the I think the impact that made for me when I was a little girl was that anything was possible. And as a young girl with a single mom, I don't know that I had that mindset until I started to get around people who were showing me what was possible. And so I love the idea of that, of what you're creating and what you're doing. So thank you so much for that.
My pleasure.
I just wanted to say also to thank you for all that you are doing for not only EXP as a company, but as our industry, because I really feel, again, 30 years I've been in this industry. My whole life was changed because of not only real estate, but because of EXP as a company. And I don't want that to go away for others. I
Right.
just want other people to feel what is possible. I barely graduated high school. So for me to go out and be able to have to do and accomplish and impact lives like I've been able to, I don't think there's any other platform I could have done that in. So I'm super grateful for the industry and I'm grateful for you and all that you're doing as a company.
Well, I appreciate you. Thank you very much. And it's an honor to have known you as long as we've known each other.
Yeah, I'm super grateful. So I always say that I go, I remember Leo back in the day. He's my favorite kind of guy. He's the one who just jumps in and gets stuff done. So thank you again, Leo, for joining us today. I'm really honored and appreciate you taking the time out of your very busy schedule.
I appreciate it.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us again on Real Estate Real World, where we get to talk to all the cool people. It's my favorite thing to do. So be sure to share on social media and give us a great review if you like what. Thank you again for joining us today, and go out and make it an amazing day. Thank you for joining us today on Real Estate Real World, where we talk with masters and leaders in the real estate industry and beyond on how we can raise the bar in our industry. Please subscribe over on iTunes, and while you're there, be sure to give us a review. Your reviews encourage us and help others to find our podcast for show notes and hot topics on what's going on right now in our real estate industry. Also, hop on over to www.realestaterealworld.com and add your name to our email to get early advance notice of upcoming podcasts. Thanks again for listening, and go out there and be a part of the elite masterclass and raising the bar on the real estate industry.